My name is Alina Moore, and until last year, I believed endurance was the same thing as love. At 35, I was a surgical resident, a single mother, and the kind of person people described as strong because I never complained. Strength, I'd learned, was expected of me, especially by my family. What no one knew was how close I came to disappearing entirely on a rainy Tuesday night. It started with headlights. I was driving home after a 17-hour shift, my mind running on muscle memory and caffeine. The intersection light turned green. I pressed the accelerator. The next thing I remember was the sound, metal tearing, glass shattering, my body thrown sideways like it weighed nothing at all. When I woke up, I was in an ambulance. There was blood on my scrubs, too much. My abdomen felt like it was on fire. A paramedic was talking, but his words blurred together until one sentence cut through the haze. "We think you're bleeding internally." Panic hit harder than the pain. My twins, Nora and Eli, were 3 years old. My sitter was scheduled to leave in less than an hour. I didn't have a partner to call. I didn't have a backup plan. I had exactly one option left: family. My hands shook as I unlocked my phone. I dialed my parents first. No answer. I tried again. Voicemail. I called my mother. It rang and rang. Then finally, "What is it?" she said, irritated, like I'd interrupted something important. "I've been in an accident," I gasped. "I'm being taken in for emergency surgery. I just need you to watch the kids for a few hours." "Please." Silence. Then muffled voices, laughter, music in the background. She came back on the line, her tone flat. "We're on our way out. Your sister got us tickets tonight. This isn't a good time." "I could die," I whispered. "You're a doctor," she replied. "You're always dramatic about medical stuff." The line went dead. Seconds later, my phone buzzed with a message in the family group chat. "Stop making everything about you. We have plans. Figure it out." I stared at the screen while the ambulance doors swung open. Something inside me broke, not loudly, not all at once, but enough that I knew it would never go back the way it was before. A nurse asked if there was someone she could call for me. "Yes," I said, swallowing hard, "but not my family." And in that moment, lying on a gurney with my life slipping sideways, I made a choice that would change everything. Because this wasn't the first time they'd chosen someone else over me. It was just the first time it almost killed me. What my family didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that for years, I had been quietly holding their entire life together. And once I stopped, everything came crashing down. I survived the surgery. That sentence still feels unreal when I say it out loud. They told me later that my spleen had ruptured and that I'd lost more blood than they were comfortable admitting right away. Another 20 minutes in traffic, another delay in the ER, and the story would have ended very differently. I spent 4 days drifting in and out of medicated sleep, tubes in my arms, monitors beeping softly like reminders that I was still here. No one from my family came. No calls, no texts. No, "How are the kids?" The only updates I received came from the emergency nanny service I'd hired from the ambulance, photos of Nora coloring, Eli asleep with his dinosaur tucked under his chin, strangers stepping up where blood relatives wouldn't. On the third night, when the pain finally dulled enough for my thoughts to settle, I asked for my laptop. The nurse hesitated. "You should really be resting." "I am," I said quietly. "I just need to see something." What I opened wasn't email or work charts. It was my banking app. I don't know why I'd started tracking it years ago. Maybe instinct. Maybe some part of me knew the day would come when I'd need proof that I wasn't imagining things. There it was, 8 years of transfers. Every month without fail. $2,300 to my parents' mortgage. $800 for their health insurance after my father retired early. Random payments labeled emergency, short-term help just this once. I scrolled slowly, my chest tightening with each swipe. When my sister launched her creative project, there were wire transfers. When their car unexpectedly broke down, I paid. When the roof leaked. When the furnace failed. When life inconvenienced them. When I was pregnant and abandoned. When I was studying for board exams on 2 hours of sleep. When I was raising twins alone. The money never stopped flowing. 8 years, over $300,000. And yet, when I needed hours, I was a burden. I closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling, the realization settling heavy and cold. I hadn't just been overlooked. I had been used. Strength, I finally understood, had made me convenient. My silence had made them comfortable. And my willingness to handle it had taught them they never needed to show up for me. That night, while the hospital hummed quietly around me, I made another decision. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply logged back in and canceled every automatic transfer. Mortgage, insurance, all of it. Then I blocked 3 phone numbers. There was no dramatic release, no triumphant feeling, just a strange, unfamiliar lightness, like setting down a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of me. The fallout I knew would come later. But for the first time since the accident, I slept without painkillers. And I slept well. 2 weeks later, when the money didn't arrive, my parents finally noticed I existed. They came knocking, angry, desperate, and completely unprepared for who was waiting behind me. The first sign of trouble wasn't a phone call. It was silence. For 2 full weeks after I was discharged, my phone stayed eerily quiet. No angry messages. No guilt-soaked voicemails. No dramatic accusations about how I'd abandoned the family. A small, hopeful part of me wondered if they hadn't noticed yet, if maybe, just maybe, they'd finally learned how to stand on their own. That illusion shattered on a Saturday morning. Nora and Eli were at the kitchen table, arguing over who got the last blueberry pancake, when 3 sharp knocks hit my front door. Not polite, not hesitant, demanding. My body reacted before my mind did. My pulse spiked. My incision twinged. I already knew who it was. I checked the peephole anyway. It wasn't my parents. Standing on my porch was a tall, silver-haired man in a tailored coat, posture straight despite his age. His eyes, clear, assessing, were painfully familiar. My grandfather, Henry Moore. I hadn't seen him in nearly 3 years. Family gatherings had always come with excuses. Too busy, too far, too complicated. I'd learned not to question it. Seeing him now felt like stepping into a chapter of my life I hadn't been allowed to read. I opened the door, and before I could say a word, he pulled me into a careful but firm hug. "You're thinner," he said quietly, "and you should have never gone through this alone." The words hit harder than any accusation. Inside, he knelt to greet the twins like he'd known them forever. Listen to their stories. Let Eli show him every single toy dinosaur. When he finally sat at my table, his expression shifted, gentle but serious. "I know everything," he said. I froze. "What do you mean?" "Your accident, the messages, the money." He paused. "Your aunt called me the night it happened. She was furious. I was ashamed I hadn't seen it sooner." Shame wasn't something I associated with my grandfather. He'd spent decades as a judge, measured, unreadable, impossible to sway. Hearing it in his voice made my throat tighten. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to start a war," I said. "You didn't," he replied. "They did, you just stopped surrendering." He slid an envelope across the table. Inside was an invitation, his 70th birthday. A formal gathering, extended family, everyone. "I want you there," he said, "and I want you to bring everything, records, dates, numbers." My stomach twisted. "Why?" "Because for years they've controlled the narrative," he said calmly. "And narratives collapse when facts enter the room." I stared at the envelope, fear and relief tangling together. "What if they hate me?" I asked. He met my eyes. "Then they already failed you long before this." As he stood to leave, he added one final sentence. "They think they've lost money," he said. "What they're about to lose is much worse." I spent the next 2 weeks preparing evidence that could destroy the version of my family everyone believed in. And when that birthday party began, my parents had no idea the trial had already started. The night of my grandfather's birthday arrived faster than I was ready for. I stood in front of my mirror adjusting a simple navy dress, nothing flashy, nothing that could be accused of seeking attention. I wasn't there to perform. I wasn't there to beg for understanding. I was there because the truth finally had an audience. The folder sat heavy in my bag, every statement, every transfer. 8 years of quiet compliance reduced to black ink on white paper. I'd organized it meticulously, not out of spite, but because facts mattered. They always had to me. My parents' house, or rather the house I'd been paying for, was already buzzing when I arrived. Cars lined the driveway. Laughter drifted through open windows. From the outside, it looked like the perfect family gathering. Inside, I felt it immediately. The shift. Conversations faltered when people saw me. Smiles stiffened. I caught fragments of whispers as I passed. Is she okay? I heard she's been acting strange after the accident. They'd started without me. My mother stood near the fireplace, elegant and composed. My father laughed a little too loudly at something an uncle said. And my sister, perfect as ever, floated between groups like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. She noticed me then. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Alina," she said lightly, "you made it. We were worried you wouldn't." "Really?" I asked. No one checked. Her expression flickered, then smoothed. "Mom said you needed space." I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on my children, who were blissfully unaware, fascinated by balloons and cake. They deserved one calm night before everything changed. 30 minutes in, I heard my sister's voice rise deliberately across the room. "I'm just so concerned about Alina," she said to a cluster of relatives. "The accident really shook her. She's been distant, accusatory." My mother dabbed at her eyes on cue. "We've tried to help, but she won't let us. She's saying terrible things about us now." I stood perfectly still. This was the plan. Paint me unstable before I could speak. I felt anger rise, but beneath it, something steadier. Resolve. Across the room, my grandfather set his glass down. The sound wasn't loud, but the room quieted anyway. "Before we continue celebrating," he said calmly, "I'd like to say a few words." Every head turned. My father stiffened. My sister went pale. "This family," my grandfather continued, "values truth, or at least we claim to." He paused, eyes scanning the room. "Tonight, I'd like us to test that claim." My heart hammered. He looked directly at my parents. "Richard, Helen, a simple question," he said evenly. "Who has been paying your mortgage for the last 8 years?" The silence that followed was absolute, and for the first time that night, I knew there was no going back. My father opened his mouth to answer, but my grandfather already had the proof in his hand. What he revealed next didn't just shock the room, it rewrote our entire family history. My father did try to answer. "Well, he began, forcing a laugh that fooled no one. "That's not exactly how." My grandfather raised one hand. "Before you explain," he said calmly, "let me finish the question." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a thin folder. Plain, unassuming, the kind of thing that looks harmless until it's opened. "This," he continued, "is a complete financial summary covering the last 8 years of your household expenses." A murmur rippled through the room. My mother's face drained of color. My sister took an unconscious step backward, as if distance alone could protect her. My grandfather opened the folder. "Mortgage payments," he read, voice steady. $2,300 a month. 96 consecutive months. Total $220,000. Someone gasped. "That's not," my mother whispered. "Health insurance premiums," he continued without pause. $800 a month after Richard's early retirement. $76,000. My father's jaw tightened. "Vehicle repairs, emergency home maintenance, miscellaneous expenses." He flipped a page. "Approximately 45,000. He closed the folder and looked up. "All paid by Alina." The room felt like it had lost oxygen. A cousin near the back whispered, "That can't be right." "It is," my grandfather said simply. "I verified every figure myself." My sister finally found her voice. "She offered," she said quickly. "We never asked her to." "No one said you forced her," my grandfather replied. "But let me ask something else." He turned to my parents. "In 8 years of receiving this support, how many times did you thank her publicly?" Silence. "How many times did you visit her after she gave birth? When she was raising twins alone?" Still silence. "How many times did you show up for her?" My mother's composure cracked. Tears spilled freely now, not the delicate kind she'd practiced earlier. "We thought she was fine," my father muttered. "She never said she couldn't handle it." "That," my grandfather said quietly, "is because you taught her she wasn't allowed not to." I felt it then, the shift. People stepped away from my parents. An aunt crossed her arms, shaking her head. An uncle stared at the floor like he'd been complicit just by believing the wrong story. My sister tried again, desperation creeping in. Families help each other, that's what this was. I finally spoke. Families also answer the phone, I said, my voice calm but clear. Especially when someone is bleeding in an ambulance. Every head snapped toward me. My grandfather nodded once. There's one more thing, he said, lifting his phone. A message sent during Alina's medical emergency. My mother let out a broken sound. He read it aloud, word for word. By the time he finished, no one was whispering anymore, because numbers can be explained away. But cruelty, spoken out loud, has nowhere to hide. The truth was finally out, but my parents weren't done fighting. What my mother said next shocked even my grandfather and forced me to make the hardest choice of my life. The silence after the message was read felt heavier than shouting ever could. My mother was crying openly now, no longer trying to control it. My father looked smaller somehow, his shoulders slumped, eyes darting around the room as if searching for an exit that didn't exist. My sister stood frozen, her perfect composure cracked beyond repair. Then my mother spoke. I didn't mean it like that, she said through sobs. I was stressed, I was frustrated. You know how you are, Alina, you always make things sound worse than they are. There it was. Even now, even with proof and witnesses and undeniable facts hanging in the air, it was still my fault. Something inside me went very still. I stepped forward, handing Nora to my aunt without a word. My hands weren't shaking. My voice didn't waver. That surprised me most of all. You're right, I said quietly. I do make things sound worse, because I'm the one living them. My father opened his mouth. Alina, please, this didn't need to happen in front of everyone. I met his eyes. It already did, just not on your terms. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. You humiliated us, my sister snapped suddenly, anger finally breaking through her fear. Do you have any idea how this looks? I turned to her. I do. It looks like the truth. My grandfather didn't interrupt. He watched closely, letting me have the floor in a way no one ever had before. I spent my entire life believing that if I was useful enough, reliable enough, quiet enough, I'd earn my place, I continued. I thought love was something you paid for in installments. My mother reached for me. We love you. I stepped back. Love doesn't ignore phone calls from an ambulance, I said softly. Love doesn't call someone a burden while taking their money. My father's voice broke. So what do you want? An apology, money back? I shook my head. I want boundaries, I said, and space. The word space landed like a verdict. I'm not sending money anymore, I continued. Not now, not ever. And I won't be available just because it's convenient. If we have any relationship going forward, it will be honest, or it won't exist at all. My mother sobbed harder. My sister looked away. My grandfather finally spoke. She's not punishing you, he said firmly. She's protecting herself. There's a difference. I picked Nora back up, holding both my children close. I'm not cutting you out forever, I said, looking at my parents one last time. But I am done sacrificing myself so you don't have to be uncomfortable. Then I turned and walked out. No one followed me. I didn't hear from my parents for 3 weeks after the party. Not a single call. Not even an angry text. At first, I thought maybe they were doing what I'd asked, thinking, reflecting, sitting with the discomfort instead of trying to erase it. I let myself believe that space might actually mean growth. I was wrong. The first crack appeared through someone else. My aunt called on a Wednesday evening while I was helping Nora with a puzzle and reminding Eli, again, not to eat crayons. They listed the house, she said without preamble. I froze. What? The house, they put it on the market last week, quietly. I sat down at the table. The house, the one I'd paid for month after month. The one they'd insisted was theirs, proof of their independence. They can't afford it, my aunt continued. Not without you. I should have felt something sharp, vindication, satisfaction, even anger. Instead, there was only a dull ache. And now, I asked, they're staying with your uncle, temporarily. He made it very clear it's not permanent. Temporary, a word they'd used on me for 8 years. After that, the calls started not to me but around me. Cousins asking questions. Relatives rethinking old assumptions. People who'd once praised my parents for raising such a capable daughter, now realizing capability had been mistaken for obligation. A week later, I got a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. Elena, my mother's voice said, tight and controlled. We need to talk. This has gone too far. Your father is having a very hard time. We didn't expect things to spiral like this. I listened once. Then I deleted it. Because for the first time, I recognized the pattern clearly. Consequences were only unacceptable when they landed on them. The next call surprised me more. It was my sister. Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. No confidence, no edge. I didn't know, she said quickly before I could speak. About the money, I swear. I knew you helped sometimes, but not like that. Not for years. I stayed silent. They're asking me to help, she continued. And I don't have it, I barely have enough for myself. That part didn't surprise me. I'm not calling for money, she added hurriedly. I didn't understand what they were doing to you. I believed her partially. Understanding, after all, is much easier when you're forced to live without a safety net. I'm sorry, she said again, softer this time. I know, I replied. And for once I meant it. When the call ended, I looked around my small apartment, at my children playing, at the budget taped neatly to the fridge, at the future I was quietly building without anyone leaning on my back. The collapse wasn't dramatic. It was slow, inevitable, and it wasn't my fault. 6 months later, just when I thought the story was finished, I received one final call, one that forced me to decide what forgiveness actually meant. The final call came almost a year after the accident. It was a quiet Tuesday evening. Nora and Eli were asleep, their doors cracked just enough for the hallway light to spill in. I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Something made me answer. Elena, my father said. His voice sounded older than I remembered. It's me. I didn't respond right away. Silence stretched between us, thick but not hostile. We're not calling for money, he said quickly, like he'd rehearsed the line. I want you to know that. I know, I replied, another pause. We lost the house, he continued. We're working now, both of us. It's humbling. I leaned against the counter, steadying myself. I'm sorry it took losing everything for us to understand, he said quietly. We failed you. There's no excuse for what we did, or for what we said. That was new, not deflection, not justification, just words standing on their own. I'm not asking you to fix anything, he added. I just didn't want you thinking we learned nothing. I closed my eyes. For a long time, I'd imagined this moment, what it would feel like to finally hear acknowledgement instead of denial. I'd thought it would feel triumphant. It didn't. It felt calm. I appreciate you saying that, I said honestly. But understanding doesn't undo harm, it just decides what happens next. I know, he replied. If you don't want contact, I'll respect that. That too was new. I'm open to slow, I said after a moment. Careful. With boundaries. I understand, he said. And for the first time, I believed him meant it. When the call ended, I didn't feel the urge to cry, or celebrate, or analyze every word. I felt finished. Not with my family, but with the version of myself that believed love required self-erasure. Life now is quieter. The money that once disappeared into obligation goes into college funds and weekend trips and emergency savings that belong to us. My children grow up seeing a mother who rests, who says no, who doesn't confuse sacrifice with worth. My grandfather still visits every Sunday. My aunt still reminds me, gently, when I start to overextend. My sister and I speak occasionally, not close but honest. And my parents, they are learning how to stand without leaning on me. I didn't get a perfect ending. I got something better. I got my life back. If you've ever been told your strength meant you didn't need support, if you've ever been made to feel guilty for finally saying enough, remember this. Boundaries don't destroy families. They reveal which relationships were built on love and which were built on silence. Thank you for staying through this story. If it resonated, share it with someone who needs permission to put the weight down.